skiff's oars slapped Blackwater Bay. The young sea captain, newly christened Lord of the Tides, looked upon the sun setting over the Red Keep. Lord Valen had oversaw preparations aboard the Silence. He would enjoy one last night in the capital before at least a month at sea, starting the following morning. The skiff bumped the docks at the base of the castle. The gold cloaks quickly verified who Valen was, as well as his new first mate. Marlon Blacktide had replaced Osmond as Lord Valen's first mate, recently as Osmond was now in the service of the Lannisters on the Western Road. Valen had one thing on his mind, Princess Elia of Dorne. She seemed quite interested before they had departed Sunspear. That was before he was named Lord of the Tides. The City Watch had cleared the streets and staircases of the common folk as the Ironborn made their way over the drawbridge.
So find yourself a girl for the night. Hellmate. Take 2.
Beckoned young Valen, as he tossed a coin over to the first mate. He hurried along the bridge, and made his way to the grand staircase. Lords and ladies came and went. A scarce few had recognized him. Even fewer had called him by his proper title. Perhaps the capital's rare warm welcome for the Ironborn had finally run its course. Valen followed his nose. Elia was prone to rose oil. Years on the sea had sharpened his senses to such things. A single guardsman stood opposite Valen at Elia's door.
I call upon the princess. She would have been expecting me.
Valen called with a pompous sense. He wasn't sure if simple confidence was the key to this lock, regarding access through her door. Where he was confident was with the princess herself. That lock had already been opened, Valen thought.
She mentioned a Greyjoy would likely be visiting her this night,
smiled the guardsman, holding a serpent-spiraled long spear. The door was open for Valen, and shut promptly behind him. Valen then poured himself a glass as he heard a moan from the bedchamber. He quickly finished his glass. Still the moans grew louder. The feather bed was ruffled and busy. Perhaps one of her handmaidens was servicing her. Valen would judge whether or not the handmaiden was attractive enough to stay. He gingerly cleared his throat, and the lady ceased making any noise. Elia's dark eyes appeared from behind the pelts as she smiled at the young sea captain. Valen set down his glass and returned a wide smile.
Has the princess started without me?
Valen claimed, with what he thought was the bravado that initially attracted her to him many months ago in Sunspear. Elia attempted to retort, but she was still breathing heavily. Whatever was going on under the pelts hadn't stopped once Valen had made his presence known. A pair of legs bent at the knee and lifted the pelts off the feather bed. They obviously belonged to a woman, laying on her stomach.
Who is your friend who brings you such pleasure?
Valen asked, as Elia continued to moan, clearly putting on a performance. The woman on her stomach still had the upper half of her body covered by the pelts. Her skin tone was much lighter than the Dornish beauty staring back at Valen.
You can find out for yourself, my lord. Perhaps she won't mind.
Valen found his way out of his pants quicker than he thought possible. He stepped forward and picked up the woman by her hips and helped her onto her knees. Valen had assumed the princess wanted to see him perform before joining in herself. Elia kept Valen's attention as she started to giggle, but it seemed different this time. The woman on her knees then disappeared under the pelts and re-emerged at the head of the bed. Valen now knew why she was laughing and why it sounded different. The Lord of the Tide suddenly realized he was being mocked as the pale woman he thought to be a handmaiden tucked her long hair away from obscuring her familiar face.
Why, hello, nephew. I expected an experienced sea captain such as yourself to have rougher hands.
Lady Yara grinned as Elia nibbled at her ear. Valen stumbled over himself to pull his pants back to his waist.
Perhaps his hands are accustomed handling ropes.
Elia continued in a mocking tone.
You could have warned me a moment earlier. Do you have any idea how close I was?
You interrupted us. And yes, I was close as well.
Elia laughed as Yara stood near the table. She nibbled on a grape and offered the princess her wineglass. Valen averted his eyes to avoid taking in his aunt.
Young men prefer to have their ego stroked before anything else. We both know you wouldn't be quick to act. For example, your ship departs at sunrise. You've been in the capital for months, yet you wait until tonight to visit my bedchamber. The egotistical are always the most predictable.
Elia finished, as Yara then joined her back in her bed.
Don't take it personally, nephew. The princess has particular taste. You've noted yourself her lack of marriage or children. I thought you might have figured it out for yourself.
Yara admitted, likely hoping Valen wouldn't take too much offense at their jest. Valen had finished dressing himself, and was about to see himself out.
Nephew, your escort to the Stormlands marks a new level of trust between the Ironborn and the Crown. Don't fuck it up. You get that pampered little bitch to Storm's End safely?
Yara pleaded. Valen could sense she was being genuine.
Perhaps the sea will be more forgiving than the ladies of the capital.
Valen grinned as he departed the bedchamber. His stern eye contact with her guardsman turned to a grin as he walked past him, down the torchlit corridor. The sun broke over Blackwater Bay and onto the deck of the Ironborn flagship, Silence. Valen had refused the pomp and circumstance of a royal dockside departure. The King's covered skiff was halfway through Blackwater Bay, where the Silence was drawing up its anchor. The beautiful Princess Brianna needed little assistance making her way up the rope ladder and onto the deck. The city bells rang, marking the princess's departure from the city. First Mate Marlon Blacktide announced the princess's arrival for all on deck to hear. Valen was behind the helm, not paying much attention.
Captain, the anchor is housed. The ship is now underway.
Valen rose to his feet, and the deck fell silent.
Men, our destination is Storm's End. Through the most treacherous waters the storm god can churn. Perhaps he'll mind his temper at the sight of our black sails.
Valen paused for a moment to clear his throat, as the seagulls circled overhead.
4 ships departed yesterday, and will clear our path of anything that may delay the princess's voyage. We are honored by your presence, Princess Brianna, as well as the members of your guard. Marlon shall show you to your quarters, and we shall dine together this evening, Princess.
Valen offered, as First Mate Marlon assisted the Baratheon guards in handling Brianna's belongings. Valen thought it interesting. She only required a pair of soldiers. Perhaps the rumors surrounding her capabilities were true, or even half true. Once the Baratheons were safely below decks, Valen shouted to his deckhands.
Full canvas.
24 deckhands shouted in unison as the rigging sprang to life, and the golden kraken of House Greyjoy flapped in the wind, blowing them across the Blackwater Bay and out to the narrow sea.